Hello and welcome to Laura Banks' Fine Artist YouTube channel. Today I was back in Doylestown, Pennsylvania to visit the Mercer Museum. The Mercer Museum was completed in 1916 and was one of 3 reinforced concrete buildings created by Henry Chapman Mercer. The Mercer Museum, along with Fonthill Castle and the Moravian Pottery and Tile Works, are one of Doylestown's historical attractions known as the Mercer Mile. If you're new to my channel, please check out my website at laurabanksfineart.com. There you can check out my artwork and see any other blog posts or YouTube videos that I've created. Also, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. It really helps my small channel grow. So, Henry Chapman Mercer lived from 1856 to 1930. He can be described as a gentleman, anthropologist, archaeologist, tile maker, collector, and scholar. He was a big supporter of the arts and crafts movement in 1880 to 1920, which prized handmade objects over machine-made ones. I go into a little more detail about his life in one of my previous videos about Fonthill Castle. The Mercer Museum was used by Henry Mercer as a showcase for his collection of pre-industrial tools and features 60 different crafts and trades. The core collection of the museum has over 17,000 objects and offers a glimpse into the technology of those living in the 18th and 19th centuries. When Henry Mercer made his 3 buildings, he chose concrete for their construction. Especially for the Mercer Museum, this was important because of the concrete's fire-resistant properties. The roof of the Mercer Museum is about 5 inches thick and rests on vaults rather than on beams. What was interesting was that there were no formal plans or blueprints for this building. Henry Mercer simply sketched and described his ideas for his foremen and laborers to complete. Henry Mercer is known for saying that the building was made for the collection was not made for the building. The exhibits in the Mercer Museum were planned and organized by Henry Mercer according to his own system. Each level of the museum represents a different classification. Smaller objects and tools around the museum are protected behind glass in rooms and alcoves. They're grouped according to their purpose. Larger items, on the other hand, hang over the balconies of the galleries themselves using thin wire. These objects can be viewed from multiple points of view and allow for mundane objects to take on a new meaning. When you first enter the museum on the ground floor, you will find a modern climate-controlled wing, and this includes the changing exhibit gallery, a lecture space, the museum shop, as well as the restrooms. After you've checked in and bought your tickets, you walk up some of the main stairs, and there you enter a hallway that isn't quite the main museum itself, but it gives you a little introduction into Mercer. There's a little side room that you can go into that offers some more information. One thing that I really liked about this area is there's this little interactive movie screen that has an actor playing Henry Mercer, and you can press these buttons and they will ask him questions and he will answer them for you. I got a little more information from just taking the time to listen to his responses, and it was actually an interesting kind of addition. There's also a research library located in the museum. This is on level 3 of the museum, and it contains a collection of materials that cover the history related to Bucks County and the surrounding regions. After you have walked down the hallway past the interactive Mercer display, you have to walk up a few more stairs to get to the historic area of the museum. Here, you first go in and enter the central court. This is an awe-inspiring moment as you gaze up and see this room filled with objects. On display in the central court are some of Henry Mercer's large and unusual objects, and these include a whaling boat, a stagecoach, a Knosoga Wagon, and a chase, and the list goes on and on. Henry Mercer saw the value in preserving the technology of the past, and he knew that these items were rapidly vanishing. He sought to show the unending human struggle with nature and thus created this museum. Henry Mercer began to build his collection in 1897. He filled his museum by making frequent trips into the countryside and collecting anything he could find scattered in barns, farmyards, and attics. He would attend country sales, he sent assistants to collect items from across the country, and he urged his fellow historians to gather these items as well. One thing that makes this museum unique is the way in which the objects are displayed throughout the 6 floors. Many of the objects are suspended in the air, and even the ceiling is covered. The entire museum was kind of reminiscent of an antique store to me, where you just see all these objects crammed together. They were small enclosed rooms that lined the outer walls, and you can peek inside them and see tools of various trades. They also had plaques on the side that gave you a little bit more information about what you were looking at. When you tour this museum, it's self-guided. However, there are gallery guides that are available to answer questions if you have any. I do hope that in the future they would have guided tours. I really feel that with the guided tours, you get a lot more information and little details that you don't otherwise get from reading a plaque on a wall. I have to admit that this museum is a whole lot to take in all at once. There are things everywhere you look, and it's impossible to go through everything that you would see here on my YouTube channel. That would take hours. But there were certain objects that kind of stood out to me. One object that caught my attention was the vampire killing kit. And this you see even before you enter the historic portion of the museum. The box is filled with items that were thought necessary for protection against vampires when traveling to little-known countries in Europe. Even though we know that vampires do not exist, some people in the 1800s believed that they did and would sometimes carry a kit like this. The items in this kit include a pistol, silver bullets, an ivory crucifix, powdered flowers of garlic, a wooden stake, and Professor Blomberg's new serum. At first, it was believed that this was a genuine kit. However, it is now believed that this kit was actually assembled in the 20th century and passed off as real. Like other similar fake kits, the paper labels have been artificially aged, the old case has been modified, and the silver bullets are actually made of pewter. And pewter is a malleable metal alloy consisting of tin, antimony, copper, and sometimes silver. Another important display were the stove plates and fire backs that you can find in one of the rooms on the upper floors. And these were important because Henry Mercer had an extensive collection, and he would use these plates as inspiration for his tiles. The first heating stoves used in America were 5-plate stoves, and these were often decorated with relief and biblical pictures and texts. And again, Mercer would use these as inspiration for his tiles, which is what made him famous eventually. These stoves were used for about 50 years, until in 1770, more efficient 6- and 10-plate stoves were used. Mercer has examples of those type of stove plates in a different room. One thing that I really liked about the stoveplate exhibition room was this beautiful tiled fireplace that Mercer had. I guess I really liked it because it was so colorful. Most of the things in the museum are browns and earth tones, but this was a nice pop of color in the museum. Another interesting side room and a place where you can see more of Mercer's Moravian tiles was the President's Room. And the President's Room was meant to be a private office for the president of the Bucks County Historical Society. After Henry Mercer's death, the room was used for non-public functions and storage. One of the larger items that you can see here is a Conestoga wagon. During the first half of the 18th century, settlers of Conestoga River Valley in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, developed these wagons. The Conestoga wagons were essentially a more robust version of the covered wagons and were initially used to carry farm, produce, and local freight. Eventually, they will be used to pull freight across North America. The wagons were pulled by a team of 6 horses and could measure up to 60 feet in length. Eventually, these wagons became obsolete when the railroads took over the jobs of hauling long-distance freight. One of the creepiest features in the museum is located in an area that I describe as almost like an attic, and it's the 7th floor. You can find a hearse as well as a real gallows, and you can walk under the gallows and look up above, and I believe it was actually used, so just very creepy. If you're sensitive to those things, I wouldn't go up all the way to the 7th floor. I would just avoid that area. On the ground floor, you don't want to miss the museum's rotating gallery exhibitions. The exhibition that was on view while I was there was called The Doane Gang, Outlaws of the Revolution, and this is on view from May 3rd, 2024 to December 31st, 2026. The exhibition was about the rise of the Doane Gang. These were individuals who were loyal to Great Britain during the Revolutionary War. The core individuals were members of the Doane family located in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. However, there were other loyalists who were unrelated to the family. This group was known to have spied on the revolutionaries and helped prisoners of war escape. I found this exhibition to be a really well done, and it was fun to kind of wander around. There are a lot of really great details. I really enjoyed these little stations where they asked for people's opinions as to what they would have done in a certain situation. One example was, you've discovered that the British are planning to raid Bucks County. You have inside knowledge. What would you do? Would you share what you know, do nothing, or join the loyalists? And people could take a little plastic coin and put it into what slot they would have done. And they had those throughout. And it was interesting to see what people answered versus what I would have done. Overall, this was a really interesting museum. It's unlike anything I had seen before. There is a whole lot to see, so you do have a little sensory overload. So it might take 1 or 2 trips to really see everything, but definitely worth checking out in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for coming with me on my tour today, and have a great day.